Here we are with my old friend, colleague, and Hall of Famer, Steve Flink. Steve, how are you?
I'm fine, Ubaldo. I'm looking forward to recapping the tournament with you. It went by very fast. All told, it was a very compelling U.S. Open. One of the better ones, particularly the first week.
Yes, I want to give you the bad news that we both have. We are going to do our last video chat, because we both have been fired since we didn't predict at all the final between Raducanu and Fernandez. So we didn't even mention them when we were talking about this, when we did our preview.
Well, Ubaldo, I say one quick thing about that. You and I are fired, but so is everybody else.
Yeah.
Nobody mentioned them at the beginning of the tournament, so I think we're off the hook.
Yeah. So anyway, I mean, so in the women's predictions, we didn't even get close. It's true that we were accompanied by many. I would say by all.
Yeah.
And about the men, in a way, also we both thought that Djokovic would have probably made the Grand Slam, and he didn't. But anyway, let's start with the men's tournament, okay? And then we will go to the ladies. So I can just start saying that before the weekend, I was thinking that Mr. Djokovic would have written the story of the tennis. And instead, the story of the tennis has been written by Raducanu.
Yes, well, explain it. Just give me a little bit more what you mean by that. I mean, the fact that she was the bigger story?
Yeah, I mean, the story, if Djokovic would have made the Grand Slam, that would have been the story of the last 52 years. I mean, the story of the half century. While now the biggest story, in a way, okay, Djokovic lost his chance. Then we will discuss about that at length. But the reason why this tournament will always be remembered probably is because a girl who is number 150 in the rankings, who came out of the qualis, won the tournament without losing a set, is probably the most unexpected and biggest story of all. Then, of course, it will depend if she will follow up to this slam with many others, or if he will not win anymore anyone, and that also could be an incredible story in the future, or and everything else. I mean, so that is what I meant.
Yes, no, it's astonishing that what she did, and she had a better draw than Fernandez, for sure, because Fernandez was beating all the big names, and Osaka and Angie Kerber and Sabalenka, all these great wins for her.
Svitolina.
And Svitolina as well, who's the number 5 seed. So those, 3 top 5 players along with a former champion in Kerber is pretty astounding. However, I kept watching round by round with Raducanu, and then I realized by the time she won her semi that it looked to me like she'd be unstoppable in the final, because those scores were no accident, and she still beat very good players herself. A lot of people thought, Ubaldo, that Sakkari would stop her run. And Sakkari had these 7 break points early on in the first 2 service games and didn't convert any of them, and got behind and never could really catch up. But I felt like Raducanu is a very hard player to break down, Ubaldo, didn't you? I mean, there are no real weaknesses, and she has a way of dictating the points without trying to hit the ball too hard. And she has great strategic sense out there.
Well, since I saw Raducanu beat Sorribes Tormo 6-0, 6-love, 6-1, and Sorribes Tormo had done pretty well in previous tournaments. And then she plays the Olympic champion. Okay, so it's true that her draw was a little easier than the one of Fernandez. But still, I mean, she beat Rogers, who had won versus Barty.
Yeah.
She beats Bencic, the Olympic champion, again convincingly. Then she, you know, I mean, also.
You probably noticed, sorry, Ubaldo, in not one set beyond 6-4 in the main draw, a 1-7-5 set in the qualifying. That also impressed me that she could beat these people so badly. And you mentioned Bencic.
Yeah.
I thought, again, Bencic might be the one, and Bencic was thoroughly frustrated by the score. She didn't know what to do out there. She was just completely outplayed, and she started to make pressing. She was pressing. She just had no way to impose herself in that match. And then I thought Raducanu was even better against Sakari. So once she played players that good and wouldn't let them even get her to a tiebreak or a 7-5 set, I thought to myself, there's something pretty, she may be unstoppable in this tournament.
Yeah, and she, yes, and then she was. I mean,
yeah,
and then also, since now we have been talking about them, let's go on with the ladies. I mean, when we talked, we didn't expect Osaka to disappear so early, so quickly, almost, I would say. And also, well, yes, she had lost maybe when we talk in the middle of the tournament, but then Barty also, we didn't expect she could possibly lose to Rogers. I mean, this tournament has been quite strange, no? Don't you think so?
It was, yes. I mean, in the case of Osaka, what are the chances that she's playing somebody like Fernandez and she's up 7-5, 6-5, serving for the match, has not lost her serve yet? What are the odds that she would lose that match, having been so dominant on serve? But she did. Lost her serve, lost the tiebreak, started to implode a little bit emotionally, and the match got away in 3. And then same thing with Ash Barty. You figure that she had so many chances right to the end to put Shelby Rogers away, and it went all the way to 5-all in the tiebreak in the 3rd set. And right to that moment, I thought she was going to win, and she did not. And
then Steve, wasn't she up 5-2 in the 3rd? I mean, against Rogers, yeah.
She was up 5-2 in the 3rd, and you know, she served for the match. She was really shaky when she served for the match the first time. She had 2 chances to serve it out and didn't do it, and that's pretty shocking for a player of her stature, Ubaldo, to have that happen.
Yeah, Steve, she missed some easy forehands, which normally
forehand went completely awry. You're right. The forehand is really what let her down from 5-2 in the 3rd. But even so, I still thought in the tiebreak that she was going to win until it got to 5-all. I still thought in the end she'd find a way to beat Rogers. And if she had, Ubaldo, I still believe, I mean, when they were going to know this, but had she gotten through that match somehow, I still believe she would have won the tournament. We'll never know.
Who knows? Because with Raducanu winning so easily against everybody.
Right.
I mean, one thing is to think that she may lose 1 set, which she never did, as you just mentioned. And another thing is that she would lose 2 sets. So maybe if she loses the first set, she may get, you know, stressed and psychologically in danger, and then she may lose the 2 sets instead of 1. But honestly, she didn't give a chance to anyone. So I mean, how can we say that?
No, you're right. I just think you're right, but I believe Ash Barty with her big match by then, you know, she would be closing in on the title, and it would be very different circumstances. And I think maybe that might have been one of the few players that Raducanu would be intimidated by, because she didn't seem intimidated by anybody else, which was very impressive to me, Ubaldo, the way she carried herself on the court, the confidence that she had.
Well, and it's true that some people still, when they went to the final, Fernandez and Raducanu, knowing that Fernandez had beaten those 4 players that you just mentioned, Osaka, Kerber, Svitolina, and Sabalenka, most people seem to think that Fernandez would have won. I don't know what about you, because we didn't talk before the women
No,
ladies final. So, and I know you're honest.
no,
So if I ask you what you were thinking before, I'm sure you would say what you were thinking.
no, I'll be very honest. I would, like you, I was wrong. I thought in the men's, I believe Djokovic would win right up to the end. So I was wrong on that. But on the women's, I honestly believed my prediction to my friends in the press room was 6-3, 6-4 for Raducanu rather than 6-4, 6-3. So that one I was pretty close on. I just had the
Oh my
sense.
God, very close, very
Yeah.
close.
But I just believed in her at that point. I also thought, Ubaldo, that maybe would finally catch up to Fernandez. So many long matches, it's a lot of strain, and she physically she was fine, but she'd been escaping and many times. I thought this time she would have a difficult time breaking down her opponent, finding any weaknesses, and she did. And I also felt she did not serve well. Her first serve percentage was very low, and part of the problem was that she was a little bit afraid of Raducanu's second serve returns, and that made Fernandez try a little too hard to get all those first serves in, and she wasn't up to the task. But Ubaldo, for 2 sets, it was pretty close to 2 hours. So it was very competitive. A lot of long games, a lot of long deuce games, some exchanges of breaks, and Fernandez fought hard to the very end. So I think the fans were pretty happy with that. You and I have watched so many straight set women's finals at the U.S. Open between veterans, that were not as interesting to watch as this match was. Did you enjoy it?
Yes, I did like it a lot, and then also it was in a way also very difficult to predict, not only for what had happened before, but also for the fact that you knew that they were two unexperienced girls playing their first great final.
Yeah,
And nobody could predict also psychologically and mentally how both would have reacted to that. And also how, in case one of them had lost the first set, how would have played the second set, both the winner and the loser of the first set, because sometimes it changes a lot. We have seen so many matches in our lives.
Ubaldo, you summed it up beautifully, because I think they handled it. Then I didn't sense a lot of nerves from either. They were very impressive in the way they played that match. It could have been a quarterfinal. It didn't have the feeling of two players who didn't believe that they belonged. They both believed that they belonged, and they both thought they were going to win.
Yeah, in front of 23,000 spectators. How many times it happened to them to play in front of 23,000 spectators before this tournament? Probably never.
It's true. But you would think, Ubaldo, it's one thing to have a great run, as they both did, to make the final. And here's Fernandez, who's 73 in the world, and this great young left-hander just turning 19. And there's Raducanu at 18, the first British player to win this title since Virginia Wade. And by the way, Virginia was there, the 1968 champion. Virginia was almost delirious with her expressions and her mannerisms, having a great time watching this young girl take the title. She couldn't have been happier. So, but you're right. You figure it has to sink in when they're playing for the title, and it really didn't. Yes, a few anxious moments from both that more had to do with the score than the occasion, and then they just get right back to business. So I was very impressed with both players, particularly with Raducanu.
Yeah, sure. And then I can imagine. I am a little jealous about those two countries, because you have a United Kingdom who is on his way to lose Andy Murray because of his age, and then finally suddenly they find a girl who is 18 years old, who can go on for 12 or 15 years, who is capable to win a slam being 18 years old. So they have our British colleagues. They will, which I was, thinking, oh, who knows if Murray is not anymore on the circuit. Evans is not of the player of the same level. We may see them partially disappearing. We have seen in the past that when the British, before Murray, okay, they were following tennis a lot before Wimbledon, because Wimbledon is Wimbledon, is the championship. But then they were not covering tennis so much. And now they have a star. A star is born for sure.
Yeah, and we saw a little glimpse of it. Ubaldo and Raducanu had that good run at Wimbledon, and got through the first week and did a very nice job.
Yeah.
Then was a bit overwhelmed by it all, so she still had to qualify to then come through the qualifying, and so she won 10 matches. 10 matches without that. The qualifying is not easy. Frankly, some of the people she beats in qualifying are as tough as the people she plays in the main draw. So
10 matches and 20 sets.
Yeah, incredible, incredible. And I just feel like, Ubaldo, we've seen you and I have had this discussion so many times. They call it the musical chairs of women's tennis, meaning that it keeps changing, and some great player wins their first and you have hopes they will win more, and then somebody else comes along, and there's not a lot of continuity among players, winning more than one and keeping it going. But I think Raducanu, both of them actually, they're so young at 18 and 19 that you have to be optimistic that they're going to get a lot better in the years to come. And so I would be shocked. In Raducanu's case, I'd be shocked if she didn't win a bunch more of these in the years ahead, because she isn't even close to her peak yet.
Yeah, that's true. Anyway.
And by the way, I should clarify, I don't want some of our listeners to misunderstand. Obviously, you mentioned Murray, and Murray won the U.S. Open in 2012. But when I said she was the first British player, I'm talking about just the women. But now, as you pointed out, she will carry British tennis for a long time, because they don't have a similar player in the men's game that can really hope to be winning majors like this. And Tim Henman was there doing commentary, and you could see how happy he was.
Of course.
It's great for them.
Oh, of course, because of course also the TV audiences in the United Kingdom are safe for the next 15 years. And same thing I would say for Canadian tennis, because in Canadian tennis you have Fernandez in the women's, you have Auger-Aliassime in the men, without forgetting, of course, Andreescu. And Shapovalov. I mean, it's an.
And Andreescu was playing very well in this tournament. Lost a heartbreaker to Sakari. Who knows if she might have made another bid to win the title that she took 2 years ago. But Ubaldo, just a quick point about Fernandez and Raducanu that struck me. They're both, and I say this as a compliment, self-centered in the best possible way. In other words, they know how to just keep thinking about what they need to do, what they're trying to achieve. They're not in awe of anybody. Raducanu was asked about Fernandez being in the final, and I think they thought she might give an answer like, it's so great, we have 2 teenagers in the final, I'm so happy for her. Her answer was basically, I'm only thinking about myself right now. I'm in the final, and I'm thinking about what I need to do in the final. So it was basically, I don't care who I'm playing, I have to worry about what I need to do from my side of the net. And Fernandez had the same kind of an attitude. And I think it had a lot to do with why they succeeded, is that they're very focused on their own needs and not worrying about anybody else.
Yes, then I know how dangerous is to go on this field, especially in recent times, but they also look very nice. I mean, also, I mean, now sometimes they say, oh, you shouldn't mention either the aesthetic or other aspects of an athlete. But I can say in general, I mean, I'm not just saying beautiful or pretty or whatever, but in general, they look very nice. I mean, they're 2 young girls who it's a pleasure to watch. I mean, the way they play, the way they act, the way they behave. I mean, all together. I mean, 360 degrees.
Yeah, I totally agree. They're immensely appealing in different ways, and that's going to be good for women's tennis too, to have 2 people like that, 2 strong and confident young players like that.
And I think WTA needed. I think
they did. And it's encouraging you, Balder. None of us would have anticipated it, but now we just have to hope. Obviously, there'll be a few bumps along the way. They're not going to be able to dominate the game. It doesn't mean they're going to go out and each win 2 majors next year and push everybody else aside. But they'll be in the forefront of the game, and they add so much vitality to women's tennis. Now, a quick word on the negative end of things, if I may. Sabalenka, once again, you mentioned Sabalenka. In her match, Ubaldo, it was she self-destructed again. It's frustrating because I think she's so great when she's on. She's hitting winners at will. She serves to pinpoint accuracy to the corners, aces, service winners, and the match seems to be totally in her hands, which it was at the beginning against Fernandez when Sabalenka went out to a 4-1 lead. But then the set got away from 4-1. That was critical that she lost the first set from 4-1 up. And even though she came back to win the second, it was an uphill battle from there. And then the last game of the match, serving to stay in the match, same thing. Terrible game, double fault, bad errors, I think 2 double faults. And she just was, it was sad to see her do that to herself again, because I think she can be a great player if she could somehow get her emotions and her game under control. Because as I say, when she's flowing and when she's really in sync, she's a great player to watch too. Did you see that match?
Yes, yes. I believe that I mean, she has sort of double personality, because when you talk to her after a match, or she's always smiling, always relaxed. I mean, she doesn't get nervous. She's and then on court, she may change completely from one moment to another to become a different person. And losing her mind. When she starts losing her mind, she's capable of anything. Like she was in the good side, she's also in the bad side.
Yeah, I mean, a friend of mine was a bunch of my friends were predicting she would win. They thought maybe this time, because she was in the semifinals of Wimbledon, and maybe this time she would do it. And she looked good on her way to the semifinals, and was terrific at the start against Fernandez. And don't get me wrong, I take nothing away from Fernandez, who once again saw problem solved and adjusted her game beautifully and found ways to coax errors out of Sabalenka. But Sabalenka, she did beat herself in many ways again. And I hope she can stop that pattern and get over this, because I'd like to see her win some big titles in the years ahead too. She has a spark, as you said, especially off the court, but even on, when she's playing well, she has a sparkling personality, and she's a dynamic player to watch. She's so gifted.
Sure. Listen, okay, I think we can start talking about the men's tournament after we underline again that we had a great women tournament. So because that was really interesting, exciting, historical in a way, and so we hope to have women tournaments of the same level and same appeal also in the future. That I think you can agree on that.
Oh yeah, I hope we do, because they had from the beginning to the end of the tournament, it was one of the best majors they've had in a long time. We're in agreement. Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about what happened in the men's tournament. Let's say today, writing about the US Open, the end of it, I wrote a story asking the readers of ubitennis.com if they thought that Djokovic would have deserved to be the first one to win a Grand Slam, to realize the Grand Slam 52 years after Rod Laver. And also I did ask, do you think he was more physically tired because he had been 6 hours more than almost 6 hours more on court than his opponent, or mentally tired and stressed because of the Grand Slam issue? And of course, this create a lot of discussion, debates, because now he has won only 20 slams like the other two, and so they say, oh, you shouldn't write that he deserved to be a Grand Slam winner, and a Grand Slam, let's say, a successor of Rod Laver. So what is your opinion about it? So we start from the end of the tournament. What do you think about what happened with Medvedev? And what I'm saying is, without taking out anything of what Medvedev did, because Medvedev played beautifully. Medvedev couldn't serve better and couldn't run more, and he seemed from the baseline a player like Djokovic, when Djokovic wasn't missing and taking a lot of risk and dictating the game.
Yeah, I feel all of that is true about Medvedev. All of it is true. There's no doubt that he played great tennis. But then the question becomes, was this anywhere near the best Djokovic? When Medvedev said after the match, I know, excuse me, I know that Djokovic was not at his best. It was not me. That's an understatement. An understatement. This was not a Djokovic to me that was far, far below his best. Now that takes nothing away from Medvedev, because he had to deal with a crowd that was incredibly strong on Djokovic's side. Djokovic has never had a crowd in New York that that wanted him to win more or was louder, more supportive. So I don't think I don't want to take anything away from Medvedev, but I think Djokovic, you alluded to the two factors, the physical and the emotional. Was it the strain of going for the Grand Slam? Was it the 6 more hours on the court that you referred to? He seemed to be saying in his press conference, Ubaldo, that it was a combination of the two. He said I had no leg. He said I had no leg.
Sorry if I interrupt you, but it's always a combination of the two, because there is a physical part and the mental. There is always a combination of the fact that your opponent had a good day and you had a bad day. It's all matter of measuring those conflicts. I mean, how much was lower Djokovic, let's say, performance to his standard, and how much, how much was Djokovic who lost the match, how much was Medvedev who won it. So could be, there is always a combination of the two, but you can say 70% of one thing and 30 of the other, or 45 and 55. And same thing about what you said before about the physical and mental. Could be physical 30 and mental 70, or 50-50. So this is what our analysis needs to clear. I mean, to say what is our opinion about it.
Well, we're obviously making educated guesses. All I would say is this, Ubaldo. You notice that Djokovic did a lot of serve and volleying, actually did it quite well. It was successful because Medvedev is back by the fence trying to make those returns, and Novak would swing him wide and come in. And then he also tried to work his way a lot in during the rallies, unusually so. It was clear to me that he was not willing to grind from the baseline. That's not Djokovic. Djokovic will challenge you on every single time, and he knows that Medvedev can be a wall from the backcourt. He knows how it's one of his toughest challenges from the baseline is to out rally Medvedev. On the other hand, he will do that to prove a point and to show that he has the variety. He hardly used the drop shot. Djokovic has that great drop shot. We hardly saw it. Medvedev drop shot at him a lot more. So I just think if you look at how Djokovic played the match, he didn't feel he can move well side to side or forward. He didn't trust his legs. He said afterwards he had no legs. Well, then that made him play differently than he would have. So the physical, I guess I would argue the physical was an even larger part of this, the reason for the loss than the emotional, because I think when he gets himself in other words, Ubaldo, if he had broken serve to go up 2-love in the second set when he had love 40, and he 2 of the 3 break points he probably should have won, and he wasn't able to convert, and then 2 games later In the fourth game, he had 2 more break points that Medvedev played beautifully to get out of. But if Djokovic goes up the early break in the second, the way he did against Berrettini, the way he did against Zverev, the way, you know, all that pattern was there from Kei Nishikori where he would lose the first set and then make his move in the second. Then maybe we would have found out if the physical part was there. I just don't know that it was. I just didn't see evidence that he could do the things that he normally does on a tennis court to win, that he was having to play with a different mindset, a different philosophy and it was not going to work. Not that day, the way he was feeling. So I guess I'd put the physical more in the 60% range and the mental, emotional Grand Slam pressure maybe 40, because I think he handles pressure better than anybody.
Okay, so one of us must be right because I do the opposite. Which I think the mental part is from my point of view, is the biggest, was the biggest problem, because since the beginning he started and he lost immediately his serve in the first set.
Right.
It's true that this had happened also in the other matches, because he lost his first set, I think, 6 times. So I mean, or five. Five. Yeah, 5 matches. Yeah, that is almost unbelievable. No, and then in the final also. I didn't have the impression that he was pushing the ball ever with the same sort of intensity. It was like a little flat. And even if he was, let's say, winning maybe 1 point or so, he never gave me the impression that he was trying to fire himself, at the side changes, you look at his face. He was like, he seemed to be. I don't say I don't know, under pressure. He didn't seem to be strong. I mean, he had an attitude which wasn't the same I've seen many other times.
I think that's all true. But the question becomes why, and is it because he's saying, "Oh my God, I'm not going to win the Grand Slam. I've been trying so hard for this all year. This is what I've been priming for," or was it the recognition from within that he didn't have it physically that day? That
I don't know. Well, of course we don't know, and we don't know what was going through his mind. But to find him, one thing is to lose the first set with Berrettini, but then you win 6-2, 6-2, 6-3, or to lose another set with someone else, but then you had never, and I'm sure he had never the fear to lose those matches. Instead, he plays a guy who has beaten him 3 times out of the last 4. And he's serving like Opelka or Isner, because Medvedev lost 3 points on his serve in the first set. And then you start getting worried and say, come on, I would say, why today? Why are you playing so well, Daniel, when I desperately need to make this 28 win in a row, and I am fighting here for the Grand Slam, and everything seems to be suddenly against me. The Medvedev is playing like the best is not even comparable to the Medvedev I played in Australia. Why today he has to play so well, and I am in troubles. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to win a rally from the baseline, and I find myself obliged to find something else and go to the net, which has never been my game. 43 times, 47 times.
Well, exactly right, and that's my point, though, that he didn't want to have to play it that way. He just didn't believe that he had the movement and the agility around the baseline, nor did he trust his strokes that day. The other point made by Craig Shaughnessy, the expert who does those pieces on the ATP side, who worked with Djokovic for a while, is that he needed to hit more forehands. He wasn't hitting enough forehands. He wasn't getting round enough to hit the forehand. And I think that's a valid point too. But I think all of this happened because something was lacking physically. It sprang from that, in my view. And then that put him into that mindset that you're describing, where he didn't seem to have any emotional energy. He didn't have the intensity. And he could, and you know, Ubaldo, you say he didn't have anything going for him. It's true. You know, Medvedev was on, but he expected Medvedev to play his best. What must have surprised him and what could have helped him so much was the crowd. That I don't think he ever thought a crowd would be so wholeheartedly behind him, and that crowd really.
Well, you know, the crowd was much behind him, not only because they like Djokovic, but also because, especially at the end, they wanted a match which would last longer. They wanted to be able to say to their relatives and friends, hey, look, I was there when history was written.
Yeah,
I was there when a player 52 years late after Rod Laver was able to win, make the Grand Slam. So there were at least three different mental attitudes of the spectators. I don't know how many would support Djokovic if tomorrow is playing another match against Medvedev or any other player.
That may all be true, but Ubaldo, they were there. They were fervent and loud and effusive from the time he walked on the court. He had it from the beginning. It wasn't just late in the match when they wanted a longer match and maybe felt sympathy for him. They wanted it from the beginning. And
yeah,
that's what
from the beginning there was a Grand Slam history.
Yeah, and it could have propelled him if Djokovic had been playing his best tennis and he was more energetic and had the intensity and the self-belief, and we saw the fist pumping, and if that had all happened, it could have made a big difference to him to have a crowd that much behind him, but he was not able to take advantage of it at all. All I'm saying is, look, Ubaldo, you talked about Australia. In Australia, they had a very good first set that was 7-5 for Djokovic, and then he ran away with it, 2-2 the last two sets. And Medvedev seemed to kind of implode mentally, and he got upset. And you could see Medvedev was a little upset there. The crowd was pretty behind Djokovic a lot in Melbourne as well. But I think the reason that in that case, Medvedev didn't have the mental strength to stay with Djokovic. And to a degree, he kind of gave up at a certain point after losing the second set of that match. And this time around, it was Djokovic who he didn't have that inner belief. And I can't wait to hear what he will say down the road about it. He couldn't say too much right after the match. He was very gracious, actually, in what he did say. But I'd love to hear what he will say, maybe even when his career is over, about how he felt going onto the court. And was he negative? Did he feel like he didn't have it that day? Because he said Friday night, Ubaldo, I was out there for both his semifinal and his final. And he said Friday night, I'm going to play that match on Sunday like it's the last match I'll ever play.
Yeah, which Steve, that shows how mentally was overwhelming here, this situation. Well, exactly what you're just saying now, in my opinion, means how tough was, I mean, how important was for him.
Yes,
and that was a completely unusual situation, because he has been playing so many Slam finals, where, of course, the pressure was always there. It's not that when he played his first Wimbledon final, he wasn't stressed. But this time, since Wimbledon, he has been through 2 months of people asking about the Grand Slam. What do you do? And he didn't want to answer about that. He was just saying, I want to play, I want to win the US Open. So I'm talking about the US Open, I'm not talking about the Grand Slam. So that shows, in my opinion, that the pressure was. At the same time, I want to add one thing. Medvedev not only played very well with serve and with the strokes, but also tactically, because he was always playing, let's say, almost in the center of the court, in the middle, avoiding too many corners, so that in a way, Djokovic had to impose his game more than just running and finding himself also corners. Because when you play on the corners, also the other player in a way finds the corners. But
well, you know what? That's absolutely true. And funny enough, Djokovic did some of that to Medvedev in Australia. He was challenging Medvedev to come up with something from the center of the court, hitting down the middle, not a lot of angles. And Medvedev was missing, especially off his forehand. So, yes, I think Medvedev is almost always, especially if he's in the right frame of mind, and he was this whole tournament, then he's one of the clearest thinkers out there. And no doubt he was thinking clearly out there and using the right tactics. The question becomes, would it have worked if Djokovic was the essential Djokovic was there, the best Djokovic had showed up? Would Djokovic had made the adjustments, used the drop shot, run around his backhand more to hit the forehand inside in, just hit more winners, period? Would he have played the match differently? And then I think we would have had a spectacular final. Had it, it could have been a 4 or 5 set, just a gripping contest with both men playing well. Unfortunately, that's not what we got.
Listen, Steve, there was another subject I mentioned before, which I had written yesterday and is today on the website. It is related to the headline that I made. First of all, I wrote that I have never been a special fan of Djokovic or of Federer, of Nadal. I was always a fan of the best journalistic story. So if Federer was playing Nadal, I would have liked to see Federer winning in Roland Garros. I would have liked to see Nadal winning on grass in Wimbledon. And so that, but apart from what I was hoping or not hoping, I said that nobody deserved more than Djokovic to win to make the Grand Slam, because in my opinion, considering the surface, not just the technical abilities, but considering the attitude to the different surface, not Djokovic, in my opinion, was the best of all. I mean, the most complete of all, most complete, not the best technically, because if you look just the technicality, then you may say, oh, Federer knows how to do everything, you know, he likes, he's more various, right. And some people wrote back, and today the readers said, oh, but also Federer won 3 slams out of 4 a few years in a row, and McEnroe in '84 won 82 matches out of 85, so he would have deserved to make the Grand Slam. He only lost the final in Paris. My answer, and I would like to know yours, was that one thing is to win 3 slams, the first 3 slams in a row, and then have to face the pressure of winning the 4th slam, then to win maybe 1 slam, lose either the 2nd or the 3rd, then you cannot say you were close to make the Grand Slam. That is my opinion, but I'd like to know what you think.
Totally agree, Ubaldo. What the fans don't seem to realize is that the whole, yes, winning 3 slams in a year is a great achievement. Djokovic did it himself in 2011 and 2015. Look at Djokovic in 2015, all 4 finals like this year, but Stan Wawrinka beat him in Paris at Roland Garros. Sure. And 2011, he wins 3 of the 4, and Federer beat him in the semifinals of the French. But the point is that the Grand Slam pressure builds up. And there's only one way to do it. Start in Australia, go on to Roland Garros, Wimbledon, US Open, in that order. And it's a totally different thing. And for Djokovic they forget that he's the first one since Labour to even have the first 3 Grand Slam tournaments of the season among the men. The first one to do it. And so
nobody can explain better than Serena Williams what happened.
Serena Williams, of course, in 2015, absolutely. The same, she lost to Roberta Vinci, this obscure Italian player who was, I believe, was coached by Ubaldo Scanagatta. I could be wrong.
No, no, but we are joking, but it's true that first of all, that was a semi-final and not a
Yeah,
final.
yeah.
So Djokovic did something more. Then the difference also, as I think was pointed out by someone, is that Serena Williams was not discussed as the best player ever of the third millennium, while Djokovic, in a way, had more pressure on himself because still many people doubt that he is the greatest of the third millennium, because some the fans of Nadal thinks he's Nadal, the fans of Federer thinks he's
Yes.
Federer. Many people don't decide who they think is the best. So for him was even more, was heavier the weight than in a way for Serena, because Serena, okay, she's the best and nobody discusses her, so that's makes
No,
a
you
difference.
know what, Ubaldo? Yeah, all that is true. If Djokovic had completed the Grand Slam, if he'd managed to do it, I mean, it would have hardly mattered what he did. He would never have to win another major title, in my view, because he would have convinced many people by winning the Grand Slam.
And he knew it.
And he
He
knew it.
knew it. That's why I'm saying that the weight on his shoulders was
Yeah.
unbelievable.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it, Ubaldo. I guess the only part that we're disagreeing on is not about the weight, but about how he was handling it. And I felt like the tension, you could see it from the first round when he dropped a set to that kid Rune, which shouldn't have happened. And then it started badly against Kei Nishikori. And then he played the American Brooksby and lost a 6-1 first set. And then the start against Berrettini, he was tense. It was a good long set, 7-5, but he lost it. And then again against Zverev, he was getting overpowered.
In those cases, he wasn't tired physically because he had 1 month of rest after losing in Tokyo. He didn't play any tournament, so that is what I'm saying. The pressure was mounting match after match. But
yes,
since the beginning.
Ubaldo, yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt. You're right. It was mounting, but he was coping with it beautifully. Look at the fifth set. Look at this final with Zverev, where he lost the first set, won the next two. Zverev comes back strong to win the fourth, and then Djokovic wins the first 5 games of the fifth set, loses 6 points in those 5 games, and won it 6-2 in the fifth. And so I felt like, okay, he's had this pressure, and he's shown that he's shown vulnerability at times in all those matches, but every time he came back. So now here he is 1 match away. And I felt like if he felt within himself that he had the ability to play 5 hours on Sunday and play the way he wanted, then maybe he would have dealt better with the pressure. I honestly believe he would have, because I've seen him so many times. Everybody's been agreeing that he's probably the best clutch player tennis has ever seen, or certainly of the modern era in the clutch. But he didn't put himself in a position in the final to win it in the clutch. That's what the sad part for him was. If he gets to 1 set all, if he comes back there against him. Now, the other thing we haven't talked about, by the way, is that Medvedev was cramping at the end. And I don't think Djokovic knew that. Imagine if he gotten back to 5 all, but
I don't know what would have happened. I think it would have been unbelievable, because to be honest, also we have to say you're American, but I have to say that the American crowd was not great. I mean, they didn't behave well, in my opinion. I mean, they didn't behave well, the British crowd in Wimbledon, but the American crowd in the US Open was worse. I mean, to be honest, Djokovic has found himself many times in the other position, the opposite position. But to be honest, they were exaggerating. They were booing sometimes within the
they did that. You've seen it. And I felt it sitting out there. It was almost deafening at times. It was so loud, and
it was embarrassing in a way. Come on.
It was moving in 2 ways. It was poignant in 2 ways. That Djokovic finally gets this enthusiastic, passionate support from the fans, and is helpless and can't do anything about it, but is so moved that he breaks down in tears a little bit at the last changeover, in appreciation of how they were making him feel. And then on the other end of this thing, the second part of it is Medvedev dealt with it. I really admired how he handled it because he didn't start feeling sorry for himself, and they applaud his double faults on match points, and he still didn't get rattled. He just kept doing what he had to do, and he understood. Medvedev was very mature about it. He understood why they were cheering for Djokovic, and he didn't resent it.
Sure.
He didn't resent it, and he didn't resent the crowd, and that was part of the reason why he did so well, was how he handled the circumstances. But you're right. Listen, but Ubaldo, the New York crowds are that way all the time. But what did you mean by Wimbledon? Which Wimbledon crowd? You mean when Djokovic played Federer in 19?
Yes,
Is that
yes. I was meaning
well,
that. Listen,
together.
I want to ask you another question, since you know well Mr. Rod Laver, as I do too. We have met him so many times. In your opinion, was he hoping that Djokovic would have made the Grand Slam, or was maybe hoping that that wouldn't have happened?
No, I saw him on Saturday night. There was a Hall of Fame party, and he came, and I had a long talk with him during the cocktails. He's, as you know, he's such a nice guy. He would stand there and talk to you for all day and ignore everybody else because he doesn't want to walk away from the conversation. But I talked to him a little bit about it, and he thought that Djokovic was going to win in 4 sets. Okay. And he's very comfortable with that. And then he did an interview with Cliff Drysdale the next day where he reaffirmed what he'd said to me. And he said, Djokovic is a great player. I think he's going to do it. I think he's going to win. No, I think he was would have been more than happy to have, because I think he looks at it a little bit the way you did when he felt that Djokovic would be worthy of the honor. The way you were describing, that Djokovic would have been deserving of it if he could have beaten Medvedev for all the reasons you cited and the different surfaces and his ability to adapt to the different surfaces. And no,
because Rod Laver said, as you know, won 3 slams out of 4 on grass. I mean,
yeah, of course. Yeah. But Laver has great appreciation for Djokovic and was looking forward to it and would have been very happy to be down on the court afterwards if Djokovic had won and you know, being part of that so ceremony.
He didn't say to you that he would have, in a way, liked that Roger Federer would have been the first one to make the Grand Slam. I don't know.
He didn't make that comment. No. I mean, and we know he holds Federer in very high regard. And
that's why I'm asking you.
But of course, the thing about Federer, Ubaldo, as we know, it's just so interesting the way to pick these guys apart. But he only won the one French. Yeah. Novak now has finally got 2, which wasn't easy for him. But I believe, I don't know how you feel. I honestly believe that for all the talk about Federer and clay, and he is a great clay court player, no doubt, and he wouldn't have lost 4 finals to Nadal otherwise if he wouldn't get to that many finals. Yeah. But I honestly believe I would say I would rate Djokovic as a slightly better clay court player than Federer. How do you feel about that?
It's difficult to say, because when you mentioned Djokovic winning the 2 Roland Garros, the last one he played against a Nadal who was not the same Nadal that was playing against Federer and was beating Federer in those finals at Roland Garros. So that Nadal was more difficult to beat, and it would have been more difficult for Djokovic too. So Federer wasn't lucky, was a bit lucky, let's say, in the first years of his first slams, because his opponents were not as good as maybe those one that Djokovic found, because Djokovic found Nadal and Federer were already very strong, and plus Murray, while Djokovic in the recent years is taking a bit advantage of the fact that Federer is getting closer, older, injured, and Nadal also. So, yeah, it's very difficult to compare.
Yeah, good debate. Good points, all good points. I would say this, remember that Rafa beat Novak very badly in the 2020 Roland Garros final, less than a year before Djokovic got his revenge in the semis this year, and in what was a pretty high quality, certainly one great spectacular third set that they had. But I think that's a I suppose if we got 50 experts in a room, Ubaldo, and maybe 25 would say Federer was better on clay, 25 would say Djokovic. It's a good debate.
Yeah. We should listen. We have gone over 1 hour. We didn't say too many things about the rest of the tournament. Very quickly, we should point it out, because we are going over beyond the time, the predicted time.
Yeah.
So what is, I mean, I was impressed as you probably, about Alcaraz, that I believe he will become a top player very, very soon. Top player, I mean, he's already, but maybe top 10 in 1 year, top 5 in 5 years, or 3 years, who knows?
Yeah, we had a little bit about him midway through. The disappointing part of the ending, he was great against Tsitsipas, and then he followed up and he won another 5-set match, and we saw him go out on the court with Felix, with FAA, as we call him, from Canada.
Yeah.
And that disappointed me, Ubaldo. I didn't like that. You know, he suddenly walked up and shook hands when he's down. You know, he retired early. He lost a set. You thought he was going to stay out there. He didn't. I mean, we can't know for sure just how much he was hurting, but I was sorry he didn't complete the match. Having said that, he's a beguiling kid. He's so appealing. He's so much energy, incredible forehand, and immense power up both sides. And he's for real. And I still believe what you and I were saying is true. By late next year, easily top 20 at the end of next year. I think maybe even top 10. And then the year after, he's going to be a great player by then. By 2023, he's going to be incredibly dangerous.
A quick comment on Zverev before talking about my guys, Berrettini and Sinner.
Don't get me going on Sinner. You won't like what I have to say. But okay, first one you want is Zverev.
Yes.
Zverev, I thought, it was for him, he's had some bad luck. He lost 5 sets to Tsitsipas in the French Open semi. He lost in 5 to Felix at Wimbledon, now in 5 to Djokovic here. But I think he's getting there. I honestly believe that he played a very good match against Djokovic. And frankly, if he had beaten Djokovic, I would have given him, it would have been almost a coin flip for me, him against Medvedev. Very, very close match. And so I think I'm encouraged. I'm encouraged that I believe that Zverev is likely to win one major next year. That's my call on him. I like the way he's playing, because Ubaldo, he had that 53-stroke right at the end of the third set, 1 set all, 4-5 in the third, and Zverev he was down love 40, and then he won the next point. And then to get to 30-40, he won a 53-stroke rally from Djokovic before Djokovic closed it out on the next point. So he also showed a lot of patience in that match. I think his forehand is much better. His second serve is not nearly as unreliable as it was. So I like the signs I've seen from him this year, despite the fact that he didn't get back to another major final like he did at the US Open a year ago. I'm encouraged. I'm definitely encouraged.
Okay. About Berrettini and Sinner, I tell you first what I think. Berrettini, sure. I do hope that he will be able to play one slam without being in the same draw of Djokovic.
Yes,
because I mean, against Djokovic right now, the best Djokovic, he doesn't have enough backhand to fight him. So he is, and even if I expect him to do some progress, he will never have the same backhand of Djokovic. And he has lost Roland Garros, Wimbledon, and US Open, all is against Djokovic. So I hope he will finally get a better draw. And because against the other players, he can play probably a more even match. Sinner.
You want to go to Sinner first?
No. Okay, go ahead. Go ahead. You go.
Okay. Quickly, I think it's no accident that Berrettini made it to the 2 quarterfinals against Djokovic in Roland Garros and US Open, and made it to the Wimbledon final before losing to Djokovic. So I would be encouraged on that front, as you say, if he can avoid Djokovic. that, maybe he has his chances against people like Zverev. I think Zverev is better than he is, but it's not like he couldn't beat Zverev on a great day. So I do think he's a much better player than he was when he lost to Nadal a few years ago in the semifinals US Open. Much, much better. And I think his serve was magnificent at times, but Djokovic just returned so brilliantly in the last 3 sets. There was nothing he could do. And Djokovic was able to avoid Berrettini's forehand. But I feel like he's proving that he belongs in the top 10. What he has to show us is, can he make a move to the top 5? That's going to be an open question. I'm not sure he can do that.
Okay, about Sinner, well, he lost 7-6, 6-3, 6-4 versus Zverev. I was, let's say, a bit disappointed, but at the same time, he's 20 years old. And even Zverev, when he was 20 years old, even if he had won already some Master 1000, in slams was absolutely not competitive in a way. Still, he has never beaten a top 10 player in a slam, Mr. Zverev. So can you imagine? And he's 24. What is it?
Yeah.
And Sinner is 20.
I'm glad, Ubaldo. I am glad that you called him Mr. Zverev. I think you appreciate that. No, that's a very good point about him. As for Sinner, Ubaldo, I don't understand why his forehand. You mentioned Berrettini's weakness on the backhand, and Djokovic is able to exploit that, how he doesn't have a good enough backhand. There's no doubt that's a big factor, and Djokovic is always aware of being able to get coax errors from that side. With Sinner, I get worried that the forehand, he starts to spray it long all the time. He loses control off the forehand at times, and he had set points against Zverev, and it was actually the 7-6 set was actually the third set.
He had 5 set points.
And including 6-4 in the tiebreak, and he really should have won that set. And I think his forehand just gets away from him too often. I'm a little worried about the technique. And there are times when it looks solid, and then he starts to miss again. And I think he has to become more consistent off his forehand. The other points you make about him are very valid. He's still young, and he's still very talented. The rest of his game is excellent, and he's got a great. He has a lot of drive and determination. So let's see where he is in a year or two. I'm not discouraged about him, but I do want to see him shore up off his forehand side.
Yeah, well, he's right now he's 14 in the world, and there were not many players being 20 years old who were 14 in the world.
No, so very, very true.
Yeah. And then, so who else we lost? I mean, just very quickly, because really I'm running out of time. We are running out of time. Who should we say something about? Maybe, well, Shapovalov, we already said the other day, the little disappointing. Well, you had this Oje Aliassim. What do you think about Aliassim? Because
he was just I liked the way he played. It was nice to see him in his first semifinal, and he's a very good athlete and good. I think he's a good all-around player. He knows what he's doing up at the net. Serve is improving, but he messed up what was a nice opportunity in the second set against Medvedev, having lost the first, and Medvedev is hardly losing points on his serve, just like was the case against Novak in the first set of the final. But then in the second set, he gets the break, and then he serves for the second set, 5-3, 30 love, double faults. Medvedev is back by 10 feet behind the baseline more. There's no reason to double fault. He's not going to kill you on the return. He's going to get it back. And then two set points in that game, and Felix was unable to convert the set points, and then he lost 15 out of 17 points, and the set was gone. 15 of the last 17 points. And then, so I worry sometimes he's still a little bit fragile mentally because, but I think he's making real progress to beat Zverev at Wimbledon, and then to get to the quarters, lose to Berrettini, and then to have the semifinal here. That's progress for sure. And we don't know if the Spanish kid, Alcaraz, was hurt, so it was a little bit lucky for Felix there, but he might have beaten him anyway. He's moving along. He's also much better than he was a year ago, and I think he might be a little bit more reliable with his results than his fellow Canadian Shapovalov. What do you think?
Well, if I have to pay if I had to pay a ticket, I would rather go and watch Shapovalov than Aliassim. But it's true that I was expecting more from Shapovalov and maybe less from Aliassim. Right now, even if you are right when you say that Aliassim still looks a little fragile, still is in a way is more solid than Shapovalov.
Oh, he is. Oh,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
Is. And Shapovalov, I think I worried about him after Wimbledon, Ubaldo, because Djokovic gave him encouragement, went up to him in the locker room, told him how well he played in that semi. And Shapovalov was talking like somebody you would have thought that he had been in much closer than he was. He lost his semi where he had plenty of chances, but he's been very disappointing ever since. I think sometimes he reads his own press clippings, if you know what I mean. You know, he's too inclined to get carried away with himself. And I don't think Felix, by the way, I don't think does that at all. If anything, Felix sells himself short sometimes. And there's a little bit more humility. So it's an interesting contrast between the two, but they're both going to be around a long time. I'd like to see some big matches between them in the years ahead because they play so differently.
Yeah, sure. Listen, Steve, thanks a lot for being again with Ruby Tennis with myself, differently from both Shapovalov and Aliassim. Your opinions don't seem fragile at all. They are very solid. I'm glad also that about Djokovic, we had different opinions because that creates more interest probably on our listeners because we expressed our different opinions about the physical and the mental.
Yes. But Ubaldo, just quickly, I think we do agree on one thing, though, and that's that Djokovic was really not himself in that final. The question is why. That's the disagreement is why. That's all.
Yeah. No, but it's, I mean, and then I think it's more interesting all what we say, then we will inflame the debate about it. Listen, thanks a lot. Thanks to Steve Flink, my old friend, colleague, and Hall of Famer. See you soon, Steve.
Okay, Ubaldo. Ciao.